Well, hi, I'm Laura Hill, and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to have a difficult conversation for me. It's something that's been heavy on my heart the last couple of days, and I thought, why not share what I'm feeling? Because I'm sure if I feel it, many of you have felt it. At what point do we have to step up, say something, and get involved in a situation that we know we're going to feel uncomfortable getting involved in, but it's the right thing to do? We all know that we have to be better. But when it comes to sticking our neck out there, standing up for someone, it might even be someone that we don't know, but we know what happened was wrong. And what's our obligation? We all have a different level of comfort in being outward and vocal about the things that we discuss, maybe privately among friends. But when do things rise to the level that if you have a sphere of influence, other women, friends, acquaintances, colleagues that will listen to you, at what point is it more important that you step up and say something, defend someone, call something out as being wrong, versus sitting back and trying to not make waves, which I think for many of us is much more comfortable. So I'll share with you just very briefly. I've shared before on the channel that I was a former mayor in my city. My city had about 34,000 residents, so a very small city. And I served as an elected official for 14 years. 6 of those years were as the mayor of the city. And the reason I say that is because along with being elected to anything, right? Along with being the boss, the owner of a company, any position of perceived power, there comes with it a responsibility to the people that work with you, that volunteer with you, people that look up to you, the people that you mentor, the people that you may influence in different parts of their life. My city's been on the news, unfortunately, because of a mega church in a city of 34,000, a mega church that brings in 100,000 followers, worshipers, is a pretty big impact on the community, not just on the economy of the community, but also on the fiber of the community, because a huge church like that usually has a lot of participation in community events, whether they're hosting them or participating in them. But the church in our city has been in the news because a woman has come forward who said that she was a victim of a sexual assault starting when she was 12 years old. And the person that assaulted her, she says, is a very prominent pastor. Now, you can go Google that and read up on that. That isn't really what this is about, but that's what has brought me to this point. I try to stay very circumspect now once I left office, and it's been 3 years since I left office, and so I don't feel that me constantly giving my input, or actually ever giving my input, is what the community needs. I've lived in that community for 27 going on 28 years, I think, and the success of the community is important to me, but not the economic success. What's important to me is that sense of community, the people that call it home, the families that have moved there to raise their children. And it is a city full of community engagement and community pride and school pride. But there are moments in time where you get to be disappointed, and you get to be disappointed whether an issue was handled poorly, whether there wasn't transparency, whether you were lied to. And people that hold positions of prominence in a community, in a company, maybe even think about it this way, even in your circle of friends. And everyone knows that's what I really like to talk about is friendship and the relationships between people. But there are a lot of relationships in our life. There are our business relationships and our personal friendships where we worship if we choose to do so, where we feel camaraderie and belonging among people. And when that happens, there usually is some kind of power dynamic, right? At every level, even at the PTO moms, there's always a power dynamic. But there are some people in some positions of power who've been given access to a whole lot more. They've been given access to our hearts, to our spiritual selves, to our problems, to our worries. And when someone like that betrays a trust, and not only betrays a trust, because we're human, yes, I've heard it, you can be forgiven for anything, okay. But that doesn't mean that there aren't consequences. So when something disruptive happens in your life, whether it's a boss that does something incredibly inappropriate, whether it's a friend or someone in your extended group that says or does something that rises to the level of even criminal, at what point do you have an obligation to say something? And I've wrestled with this because, again, I no longer want to use my platform for, city stuff. But a lot of my life was spent doing city stuff. And so I've had this conversation over the last couple of days with my closest girlfriends about the people that are just too afraid to speak up for what's right. And again, it happens in every area of our life where we feel like we can't say anything. And often it's because we're more worried about what's going to happen to us if we do say something. Are we going to cause major dissent in our family with relatives not speaking to each other for months? Are we going to lose friends? Are we going to be kicked out of our friend group, uninvited, not included anymore? Are we going to lose a job? If you think about your life and the different things you participate in, and you really truly look at what that power dynamic is, you'll absolutely find it. And that's what we fear. We fear that the people who are in power, popular, revered, looked up to, are almost operating at this level where no one can touch them. And if they're not a good person, if they choose to not be an honest, caring, empathetic person, and you've put your love, your like, your trust, your care into that person, what happens? What happens when they let you down? Or let an entire group of people down? Or a community down? And at what point do we need to step up and use our platform to say something about it? Now, what happened in my community over the last week and a half, I guess, or at least the news in my community, that has been on NBC and CBS, so it's obviously out there for everyone to read and see. It certainly rises to a different level, and I'm not minimizing it or comparing what happened there to what happens on a smaller scale in each of our lives, but the point is still relevant. When do we need to step in and say, that's not right? And the older I get, as I always say, the older I get and hopefully wiser I get, I think I realize that I have power just in being me. From having friends to reach out to, business acquaintances to reach out to, I have power, and I think we all have our little group that we can make a difference. And we can't be afraid to step out, to step up, because we have to be better. And it has to start with us. And it's incredibly uncomfortable to challenge someone who's done something that is absolutely wrong. Maybe even, as I said, criminal. But as someone who has been a leader in my community, it's absolutely important for me to take a position and to say, this is wrong. And the people that have the power in that church need to step up and take care of it. And I would challenge all of us in our spheres of influence to have more confidence in stepping up and saying when something is absolutely wrong, when something's unacceptable, when something is unkind, unjust, unfair. It's important because it says something about who we are, as much as it is a comment on the behavior or the actions that are really totally inexcusable. Well, thanks for giving me a few minutes to share that whole idea of when and how. How do we get past that quite natural worry and feeling of insecurity when it comes to saying what's really on your mind, especially when what you're saying is calling someone else out. And of course, depending on the situation, we don't always go to social media to state the case. There are many other kinder ways to handle situations that happen on a much, much smaller scale. But when something is big, whether it's your community, whether it's your company, whether it's a philanthropic organization that you give your time and money to, when you see something that is absolutely out of bounds, you have to put aside your level of uncomfort and do the right thing. I haven't always been able to do that. And I'll tell you, having been out of office for several years, this was a little more uncomfortable. But it's certainly something for us to all think about. And I'll continue to think about it. Because there have been too many times where I've just looked and looked the other direction, thinking, well, doesn't really affect me. Isn't my life, didn't happen to me. No. At some point, it's time to step up and do the right thing. I hope you have a great week. I hope you'll like, click, and subscribe to the channel. And I look forward to seeing you the next time, hopefully from my kitchen. Take care. Bye-bye.